Welcome to the Business of Story, where we connect you with the leading minds in the art of business storytelling. Learn from best-selling authors, Hollywood screenwriters, makers, content marketers, and brand raconteurs on how to craft and sell compelling stories that sell. The Business of Story is brought to you by Emma, which provides innovative email marketing tools and services that drive brilliant results. And by Convince and Convert, digital marketing advisors and counselors to leading brands and organizations worldwide. Convince and Convert helps you gain and keep your customers online. Here's your host, Park Howell.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Business of Story. And if you're on your lawnmower, on the treadmill, on your bicycle, driving your car, sitting, killing time at the office, wherever you are listening to the show, I have one goal in today's program. Well, I guess like all the programs, and that is to live up to the term of earbuds. That's right. We want to be your earbuds today in another amazing edition of Business of Story. And we've got a guy on today where he and I have lived parallel lives, I swear to God, and yet we've never met face to face. But when I started talking through and learning his story, I'm like, oh my God, this is me. He's only a little bit further along in his journey than I am. So like today's guest, I've had my own ad agency for 20 years. I grew it to about 20 people, small agency to mid-sized agency here in Phoenix, Arizona, working with companies around the world and a lot, of course, here locally. And after 20 years, decided to pivot and really pursue my personal passion of Business of Story and sharing with you story artists from around the world. Well, this gentleman has done the same thing. He pivoted away from his agency and he's got an amazing platform. The only difference is he's got several top-selling books to his name. He's been a TED Talk speaker. He's just really doing some amazing things, and I'm sure you probably know him. I'm going to hold off on the name. I'm going to see if you can figure out who this is. Now, his bio states he's the world's foremost leader in the art and science of sharing. Integrated the H2H, that's hashtag H2H, human business movement. He wrote a book, There Is No B2B or B2C. It's human to human, hashtag H2H. He also has another great book out called Shareology, How Sharing is Powering the Human Economy. He is a renowned global speaker, consultant, and trainer in a unique sharing experience. And like I said, he did this at TED Talk IBM up in the Silicon Valley area, and it's called Why Sharing is Reimagining Our Future. On today's show with him, you are going to learn about how the H2H rage took off and how you can humanize your B2B messages through storytelling. You're also going to learn how you can reframe your communications to H2H and tap into the sharing economy with your consultancy or your company. And finally, at the end of the show, it's really fun. We went through the 6 personal brand archetypes that you can explore on his website to learn what kind of archetype is you. It tells you sort of the character that is most expressed through you, again, through your personal passions that drive your professional pursuits. Man, say that fast. Personal passions driving professional pursuits, and what stories you create around that and live into to be successful moving forward. That's what I do here at Business of Story, and that's what I want to do, continuing to bring you these kinds of folks. And I'm not going to tell you his name quite yet. You've probably figured it out because I want to first talk about my personal passion of driving you to businessofstory.com. My job is to help inform, educate, train, and guide you in how you can create powerful business stories to drive your own personal brand forward, to drive your company forward, whether you're a solopreneur, entrepreneur, in-house marketing person, or running a large company. It's all about the stories you tell and you help your people live into within your enterprise to grow both your organization and your folks there. So visit Business of Story. I've got a workbook that you can download. I've got free online tutorials. There's videos to take you through it. And most importantly, I am putting up a survey. I would love to know what you are all about when it comes to business storytelling. What's working for you, what's not working for you, where are your pain points, and what kind of content can I bring to you so that you can be more powerful in reigniting that one true superpower that we all possess. You guessed it, the power of story. So visit businessofstory.com. Up in the top banner, we will have a link to the survey. Please jump on it and give me it. You don't even have to put your email in there. You can if you like. If you want to get some information directly back from me, I'm happy to do that if you put your email in. But all I'm looking for is just to survey our entire audience and really understand how I can bring you and what kinds of content I can bring you to help you grow as a business storyteller. So, to do just that, I am so honored to have on today's show Bryan Kramer. I went through his bio earlier, and you are going to love this man. He is all over the place. I know he is presenting at Content Marketing World, South by Southwest. As I mentioned, he's got a TED Talk out there. He's the writer of several great books. And today he's going to share with us how we can really get our head kind of out of our business mode and into reconnecting on a very human level, especially if you are working in B2B marketing or within a professional services firms, which seems to typically default to features and benefits, blah, 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 boring, you to death type communication. Well, we're going to change that in today's show. We're going to give you some great insights. We're going to have a lot of fun. And we are, like I said, going to help you reignite that one true superpower we all possess, the power of story. So without further ado, let's jump in with Bryan Kramer. Hey, Bryan, it's so great to have you here on Business of Story.
Great to be here. Thanks so much.
Yeah, it's a small world we all live in, right? Lisa Leffler introduced us earlier this week. She's over there at Influencers Management Group. I know she's been a big help to you throughout, your work as an author and a podcaster and an influencer, and she's been a great help to me. Plus, we have in common our wonderful producer, Jess Ostroff, over at Don't Panic Management, who I believe also does your podcast. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. Is there anyone else we should be talking about using together?
Well, maybe through the course of this show, we'll come up with a couple more names that we can share with ourselves and our listeners too, because we're surrounding ourselves with the best, if you ask me.
It's true.
Yeah. Well, man, it's great to have you here. I did see you over at Social Media Marketing World. I was there doing a story workshop, but you and I did not get a chance to get connected, but have been following you and what you've done with Shareology. You were talking about H2H way before I thought I came up with an original idea around H2H. So then when I saw what you were doing with it, I thought, right on, that's very cool. And it's just great to have you on the show today because you and I sort of lead parallel lives in the respect that we both had ad agencies, both roughly about the same size agency, between 15 and 20 people. And we both have decided to pivot away from sort of that, I guess, old-fashioned model of advertising and marketing through an agency model into doing what we are both doing today. And that's creating platforms, in my case, of course, the Business of Story, around how to help people tell their stories and use their own personal stories to live in and express themselves through their brands. You were doing, I guess, something, if I can be so presumptuous, a little bit similar, but more about, personal branding. You've got your book, Shareology. You've got a lot of stuff going on. So we have a lot to cover. And with that sporadic intro, let's start with the beginning. Can you give us a little bit of background about your agency life? Because I think that's where you and I connected first and foremost with what you went through there.
Yeah. So my agency life, I'm actually born and raised, if you will, in my career through agency life. So my whole career is built in the advertising space. My degree is in public relations. My minor was in actually Japanese, and I was hoping to go into international business, but I got a job right out of college at an advertising agency in San Jose, California, which is where I was born and raised. So I got a chance to come back from where I was going to school in Arizona, in Flagstaff, Arizona.
Up at NAU.
That's right.
I'm literally coming to you almost from the campus of NAU. My wife and I rented a home up here, a cabin for August to escape that stifling heat down in Phoenix. And so I'm in this makeshift little bar in the second floor of this A-frame right near NAU. I love it up here. Great school choice, by the way.
Oh, man. You are in one of my favorite spots of the whole country. It's so wonderful up there. And I had a lot of great training up there that I think I couldn't have gotten anywhere else, where I had a chance to actually, spend some time with smaller businesses that were able to focus on me way more than if I were in a bigger city. And so coming out of there, I felt like I had some of the, best training to be able to come into agencies. And actually my focus was in the digital market, which is where it was just starting to explode. And, the .com was just beginning, and I was really which gives you kind of an idea as to my age. So I was just coming out and looking at what I wanted to do, and agencies really wanted to start injecting the digital spectrum into their traditional model. And so my job throughout agency life was to help them build and model, what digital looked like and how to train them and what to do to start building websites and things like that. So I was also learn to code back then enough that I could build websites and help out and teach and so on and so forth. So it was kind of fun. And then that grew quickly into lots of different areas within different agencies where I was helping on the PR side or the account management side or building websites, eventually to leading a digital marketing team on up to helping to start a company that grew from, I think we started it at 3 people and sold it when I was at 75 people at the height of the .com, just before the .bomb. Mm-hmm. And then that's when I met my wife, 17 years ago, back in Washington, D.C. We met, and she owned her own company, her own graphic design business, and we dated for 2 years. I ended up hiring her for all kinds of stuff. I didn't actually ask her for her portfolio, which tells you how much I wanted to work with her. And so anyway, we worked together. She eventually transferred all of her work out to California, and 2 years later, we were engaged to get married. And a year later, we started a business together. And that's what turned into PureMatter, which we've now had for almost 16 years.
Wow, that's great. And you've been working with a lot of very large brands out in the San Jose area. And you've seen, I guess, some changes in how that partnership relationship worked as the market has changed and how brands are hiring and working with agencies.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Understatement, right? I experienced the same thing.
Yeah. Change is like the buzzword of my daily activity. It's, it's a crazy, I know you know this, but it's crazy how much, what everyone perceives as Silicon Valley, to be a, innovative, exciting place also is a place of change. And it has its ups and downs, as everyone knows. So when we hit kind of a recession in the country, that was after the .bomb, and San Jose, or the Bay Area, if you will, really didn't feel the recession too much because we'd already been through the .bomb when everyone exited and left. And so, so did our agency. And now we grew our agency at the bottom of the .bomb. So we actually started it when there was really a lot of companies still needing a smaller business to help support them. Mm-hmm. And so it was a great time to start an agency. The problem is that we grew, and like yourself, we grew so much bigger that we turned into exactly what we probably, the opposite of what we were when we first started, which was an accountable small firm versus a larger enterprise supportive agency. And that right there had both its challenges and its pluses, as you know, and it just grew to the point where, those kinds of changes became difficult. Dealing with enterprise companies.
Yeah. And did you find, too, the approach to advertising and marketing changed in that process as digital became stronger and there are so many different channels? It's so hard to keep a consistent brand message or story across all those channels. The urgency of having to be out there all the time. And people have editorial calendars and plans in place, but it seems like those get thrown away for, oh my God, this just happened. We have to respond. Let's get something up on Instagram, Snapchat, Facebook, whatever. Strategy starts kind of flying out the window, and it becomes a shotgun approach. At least this was my experience, a shotgun approach, especially in the digital realm. And that was the one thing that I found frustrating in running the agency and trying to be impactful, for our clients, because quite often they were their own worst enemies, and we couldn't get them out of that fear factor of, oh my God, I got to put something up right now. We're like, take a deep breath. You don't have to. And it came full circle for me because I'm a bit older than you. And I started my agency with traditional advertising and marketing, radio, TV, print, outdoor, PR, events, collateral, and that was about it. And so I needed to go back to my roots, and that was about really the power of the brand story. And no matter how many different channels of communication that are available to you today, if you don't have that brand story straight from the get-go, you're not going to get your internal team to buy into it. You are not going to be consistent on your external message. You're not going to have the positioning or the unique value proposition that is really going to make you special, separate you from your competition. And you are just going to be adding to the noise like everybody else unless you get that story straight. I don't know if you experienced that with your own firm, because that's what ultimately had me pivot away from the agency model and going back to what I really love to do, and that is building and working with brands and business leaders and communicators to get their brand story straight and simplify by focusing on that and that alone. Right. Yeah. No, you are totally dead on, and I think this is probably why we got along so well on that first phone call. Because it did turn into the Wild West, and it was really one of those places where we were moving along at a really nice pace, even though digital entered the mix into the traditional marketing market, if you will, and it was no longer about billboards, radio, and TV. There was a greater spectrum. Once social hit, it became from hundreds of opportunities to thousands of channels and opportunities. And when I say opportunities, I mean the things, the combinations of things that you could put together to create a campaign became infinite. And how you measured it became infinite, and what you said became infinite. But the one thing that was pretty constant was who you were and who you are and what you stand for. And a lot of companies kept that, and those are the ones still standing, and the ones that didn't probably either went away or they had to rethink business. It became hard, and it became hard exactly for what you're talking about, because you could put together a strategy for any given client, and the ones that stuck to the strategy the whole way through, the story, not just from the story, but the strategy behind why you were going to support that story and what methodology you were going to use it. That made any job for any team much easier. But when you change that strategy every, so often, and, there's a new thing that comes out and you're like, oh, let's insert that here and let's insert that here. It starts to become, about throwing more mud at the wall than it is actually sticking with a cohesive plan, like a little bit about what you're talking about. So it did get challenging. Now for us, that wasn't our greatest challenge. It's not why eventually we restructured our model and restructured our whole agency just even a couple months ago. The reason that we ended up doing that is because bigger business starts to, I think they're starting to hurt on some levels, not all of them, but a large part of them are starting to hurt to the point where they're giving business to larger global agencies. And I guess I'm going on record saying that, the bigger, larger agencies are hurting just as much, and they're being taken off of their retainers and put onto project work, and they're starting to dive into things that doesn't make sense for them, which is the work that us smaller agencies are doing. It starts to push us out of the realm of what we, are really good at and what they, I think, are not really good at and what they should not be doing. So it really started to clash quite a bit on that level, which also hurt from a billing aspect. We were crashed when it came to 85-day terms
upon completion of work to bill an invoice upon completion of work at 85 days. For a small agency like us, that just crushes us. So there's billing aspects, there's competition with large global agencies that wasn't there before, and it starts to make it less fun, which was the point of the whole thing in the beginning for why we even started our agencies. And when the fun's not there, then it's time to move on.
It's interesting, Bryan, and this may be a part of the universe, and it may be a part of just the way business is going. But since I pivoted away from the agency model and into business of story, the clients that I have working with now, and literally throughout North America and a couple over in Europe, they all ask the same question, which I had never been asked before this time. In the 20 years I ran my agency, I was never asked this question, and then I was asked it 5 times in a row. And it was, man, we love what you're doing, the story strategy side. We're looking for someone to come in and sort of guide us, consult us in this process. We'd love to work with you. You're not an agency, are you? I'm just like, whoa. I mean, I just had never had that. When I was an agency, nobody ever asked that. Now that I'm not, and I'm curious if you kind of experienced that same thing too. It seems like it just turned within the last 2 years.
Yeah. That's a good question. I'd probably be better suited to answer that 6 months from now because we're so fresh into it. I think you transitioned maybe a year ago, if I remember right.
Well, just at the beginning of the year, we started the transition about this time last year. This time last year is when I was waking up in cold flop sweats and like, what the hell are we going to do? And, my wife says, well, if you're just not happy with it, maybe now's the time to make that change. And she and I talked quite a bit about it. And so, we had to make that pivot throughout all of this time to the end of last year. And then January 1, it's been full sail business of story.
Yeah, no, we so we ended up it was the worst timing in the world, and nothing ever is great timing. But when something like this happens, but we ended up having to convert everybody from full time to contractor, and we did that all at the same time, the same week that my daughter was graduating from high school, and then 5 days later we had a trip planned to Europe for 3 weeks that we've had prepaid and ready to go on for over a year now. So it was like the hardest week to convert everything over and start doing that. And I ended up letting go of the clients that I was just telling you about. I ended up calling them and saying that we couldn't work with them anymore after our contracts were up. So that was always also hard as well. And so we jumped the shark and we moved on. And then ironically, this is like a testament to that good things will work out on their own. You just need to have faith. And I'm not meaning that as a religious statement, just as a general business rule.
Absolutely.
Because over the course of while we were gone, I was getting like requests for new business left and right. And I could not believe it. It was nuts, to the point where I looked at my wife and I said, "Oh man, Courtney, I don't know how we're going to handle all this." And she said, "Man, what a great problem to have, right?"
Absolutely.
So things do work out, and I'm glad that we did it.
And you have to take that leap of faith. And for any of you out there listening to this, if you find yourself in that same position of like, all right, here's how I make money. It doesn't seem to really be working for me anymore, although it's what I know. And so it's really scary to turn away from that model. Believe me, it's the inciting incident or the call to adventure in the story cycle process. You take that deep breath and you have that moment where you say, that's it. I'm going to do something different. And then you jump off and you jump into that new clearing, that potential, that possibility that awaits you. And I don't know if you experienced this, Bryan, but I certainly did. It has now kind of gone away. But in those first 3 or 4 months, all of my stress was based around my old model, my old way of making money through that ad agency. And I had to keep reminding myself, that's not what I do anymore. I have this whole new way, this whole new thing of doing it. And I have found my sleepless nights have gone away. My flop sweats have gone away. And there is this new flexibility. There's this new excitement. There's new freedom where you do get to pick and choose who you're going to work with. But you have to make that decision that I'm not going to make money that old fashioned way anymore. I'm going to, in this new business model, to help people this way, and the revenue will take care of itself.
Yeah, it's crazy when you think about it that way. And retraining your brain is hard when you're making any kind of shift. Absolutely. I know for me, I've always wanted to be a yes person. I've always said yes to everything, basically because it fed everybody's mouths. It was, when you have employees, you have an obligation to make sure that they and their families are taken care of, because it's the promise that you made under, the guise of whatever, whatever's happening or whatever you signed up for with an offer letter. And so I wanted to make sure that happened. And once we converted it, it was a relief. It wasn't it was a painful relief, mm-hmm. but it was a relief that then I could just, rethink business, and rethinking it really came down to more going back to the roots of what you love to do. For me, it was consulting and speaking and writing. And teaching. Those are the four things that I really, really enjoy doing. And so thinking about those four things and really saying yes to the things that fit into one of those four models was easier than saying yes to everything.
Yeah.
So, absolutely.
And the last thing I'll say, because I want to definitely move on to your teaching and your books and where it's taken you, because that's fascinating. When you talked about that angst of having to let people go and, what are they going to do next? I totally get that. I went through that too. I'm sure you, like me, we had really great teams, and every one of my folks found jobs right away with agencies, and those, some stuck around, and I'm working with them through the 1099 economy. But I will tell folks out there too that are running small companies, I was given this bit of advice, and it totally changed the way I looked about my people. I was told, you as the owner, the CEO, the leader of your organization are not responsible for your people. You are responsive to them. And that completely changed my look. I'm not responsible for them to maintain their job, to keep their job, to feed their families, or do whatever. They have to do and be accountable for what I expect them to do in order to do all that. So I'm not responsible for their success within my agency. However, I help ensure that success by being responsive to them, making sure that they have the equipment they need, the knowledge they need, the training they need, the availability of me and others around them they need, so that we set them up for success. We do that by being responsive, but we don't have to be responsible for their success. That's totally up to them. And that shift, that reframing of leadership really helped me a great deal when I was, ran my agency for over 20 years.
Hey, Park, where were you 2 years ago when I needed you to say that?
Having flop sweats in my bed, trying to figure out what I was going to do next. So, Bryan, then you went out, you've got this platform, you're working, and you were writing, you told me, if I've got this right, Shareology. I mean, a really amazing book that went to the top of the charts. But then you got kind of upended, and you didn't get Shareology put out first, because something else happened that allowed you to create a book that was equally as successful, that kind of came out of thin air. Do I got that right? And can you tell us that story?
Yeah, sure. I was writing Shareology when which was supposed to be my first book, but ended up becoming my second book, because H to H, Human to Human, ended up becoming a surprise baby. I ended up standing on stage after, about 8 years of using, there's no B2B or B2C, it's human to human in a slide or in presentations. In this particular presentation, it was at Bloomberg West, giving a keynote there, and I stood up and took took one of the slide that actually said that and gave it to the audience. They ended up taking a picture of the slide because they really liked it, and based upon the personal brand work that I did for the previous 2 years and some of the social proof that I think I had built, combined with the timing of that and where everybody was at in their businesses and life, thinking about what social media meant, I think the two things combined helped it to launch on its own. It went viral basically. So over the next 48 hours, it got over 80 million impressions. It was was translated into at least 15 languages that we could count, and when it was written about by over 2,000 bloggers over the next 2 weeks, and I was getting massive questions asking me what this meant. Some people arguing against it, some people arguing for it. It was pretty split, and so they were asking, what does this thing mean? And the blog that I posted, I wrote, wasn't cutting it. It wasn't enough because the topic was big enough that I needed more than just a blog. So I ended up taking everything that I had written about the topic. Thank God it was, all stuff that I had written on for the previous 2 years, and worked really diligently. Thanks to my wife and business partner, Courtney. She helped me pull everything together, and we worked hard to pull it together in about 4 days, and then self-published it in 2 weeks and got it out. And it ended up, because of the timing of that, taking advantage of that and also answering everybody's question right away with what it meant. We laid out, kind of a process for what it meant to be human to human in today's age. It's something that we've always had. I mean, we've always had door-to-door salesmen selling vacuums in a human-to-human way. But now, what does that mean today when automation is starting to take over and social media and email marketing and digital marketing is starting to automate? So how do we get back to those roots, and what does H2H really mean? And excuse me, I used some examples in the book of how businesses were using it well, how they weren't using it well.
Yeah.
There's tons, but it kind of ranges from, a Southwest Airlines response on Twitter, responding right away and actually moving somebody into a queue real fast into getting support. It's, I give an example of Avis car rental. I left my iPad in the car and I tweeted them because I couldn't find the phone number or the way to get to the specific location, and to ask them if I could get my iPad back from the rental car. All I got was like an 800 number, and I couldn't work my way around the system. So I finally just tweeted it, and they took based upon one tweet and one then direct message that we had between us. They found my iPad and shipped it back to me in 48 hours. Wow. And I just thought that was fun. And it came with a written note saying, glad we could find it. Thanks so much for reaching out on Twitter. They really front to end, they paid attention to the process and they didn't have to convert me into a ticketing system and all this other stuff that, makes a process that much more challenging.
That's amazing. And the fact that it's so specific, I had something kind of similar, but I don't know if it was just coincidental or if Delta Airlines was actually paying attention. But we were flying down to Cancun from Phoenix. It was a big family reunion, meeting up with my large family from all around the country. We had to fly through Atlanta during the wintertime in February. This was 3 years ago, and down. And Atlanta at the time had an enormous ice storm, snowstorm come in. It's the first time I've really spent 4 hours in the fuselage, in the airplane, on the tarmac, waiting to take off. And they kept saying, it'll be 10 minutes, 20 minutes. And then we didn't hear anything, any sort of updates whatsoever. And we sat there for about an hour and a half without any updates. And I tweeted Delta Airlines. I go, hey, sitting on this flight on the tarmac in Atlanta, here's the flight number. Can somebody tell us what's going on? And not 5 minutes later, the pilot comes on, said, sorry for the delay. Sorry, we've been a little bit quiet, but here's what is going to happen next. And I thought, did they actually respond to that and wire them and say, hey, you got to be talking to your people, or was it just coincidental? I hope the first. I hope they actually did respond in a human way.
I love that. And it's happening more and more now that they start to see it as a rather than a have to do, as just a natural progression of conversation, I think, for most companies. But then you see a lot of companies yesterday we went and toured this workout facility, this facility that's right around the corner that just opened up. And I went online to see what their Twitter account was doing, and just simply looking at their Twitter account, it was just all full of automation. There was no human, engagement there whatsoever. It was just quotes and how to be a better you and how to, work out in life and what it's going to do for you. But, you're looking for that, and people are looking for that connection to something that they want to pay their money into. I think that, people buy things with their emotions almost every single time. And when you look for a connection to be there, and if there's no human response or humanization of the business, we tend not to purchase that product or service. And so it doesn't just exist around social media. It exists just in life. And social media is just an extension of that. So it's an easy way for us to give examples around it, but it happens every day in everything that we do, in just physical areas of like grabbing an Uber and how you're treated, or in a service from your accountant. So everything really becomes the product of humanization at the end of the day, and how it makes you feel and what you want to buy. Yeah. And that's why I think it gets into the whole, there's no B2B or B2C, because everyone has access to the customer now. The president, the CEO, the person at the front desk, I mean, even the janitor could get on to Twitter and see what customers are saying. And if they wanted to, and I'm sure there's rules and regulations, but if they wanted to, they could reply back and say, I can help you. It never used to be that way. There's no way that there was a connection between people on one end and people on the other. So that's really what has changed.
Well, yeah. And as I mentioned, when I started my agency, Park & Co., when we were dealing all in mass media, that's when the brands really owned the influence of mass media. But now that the masses are the media, they are the ones that tell your brand story. And so the brand becomes the story maker, but not the storyteller. And just to your point, before, when you had a problem, you really had kind of one outlet. You could call up customer service and rant and rave, and hopefully they would do something. And then, of course, you would do your own word-of-mouth marketing and tell people how disappointed you are with brand X and brand Y. And that was about it. But as everybody knows, we all have a global microphone now, and something pisses us off, we very quickly can get on that and start a whole new conversation / story about that particular brand. And I'm hoping they get it, because we do a lot of work with professional services firms. And I still often hear, Bryan, that someone says, well, yeah, we need to go and sell to the senior vice president of blah, blah, blah. And we say, okay, well, who is that person? Well, I don't know, Jim something or other. All right, so what do we know about Jim something or other? What does he have to achieve? What's at stake for him by actually buying into this? What's at stake for him to not do anything, to stay in status quo? What does he stand to lose by not moving forward? What is he afraid of? Is there an internal conflict we have to overcome within him? Is it something external? What does he care about? How can we learn about what he cares about? And then, and only then, do you go in and start figuring out what your brand story is, because you're not selling a business to a business. You're selling your product or service offering to a human being that has the flop sweats in the middle of the night, just like I do, just like we all do. And we're just trying to make the best decisions for the people around us, again, being responsive to them. And that's where I think, anyways, that H to H really comes into play. Getting professional services firms, businesses to shift that mindset is your business isn't selling to that business. Your people are selling to that person.
Absolutely. I think we should take this on the road.
Well, before we do that, let's jump into Shareology, because you and I chatted a little bit about it earlier in the week. I had to take a run down the mountain down to Phoenix yesterday, and went down, of course, put in my 14 hours and got in the truck and drove back up here. And on the way up last night, there was a really great TED Radio Hour. I'm a big lover of Guy Raz. I love what they do with the TED Radio Hour. And if you haven't heard it, it's where they pull 4 or 5 TED Talk segments, and they get those folks in the studio. They have a theme around it, and then you hear clips of these TED Talks. So it's a great way, to cultivate your TED Talk listening too. Let me run over here. After reading about Shareology, and I need to read the whole book, when I heard this TED Talk, I thought it was really amazing. This woman by the name of Rachel Botsman, have you heard of her?
Yeah, she's a friend.
Oh, really? Well, and so then you obviously know how can trusting strangers fuel an economy? And this particular TED Radio Hour was about trust and consequences. And I just thought the timing was so interesting based on our conversation about you and your work around Shareology and that particular TED Talk. So tell us a little bit about Shareology, and how did you get there? You started there, got distracted with H to H, and then got Shareology out.
Yeah. Well, I picked once H got out, it was a nice deviation. But once I got back onto the track again, I'm glad it happened that way, because it became an extension to human, which was really exciting to talk about sharing in a whole different way around the human economy. And so one of the things that actually, ironically, that you're talking about TED Talks, it was my TED Talk that actually sprung the book forward. And once I was able to really grasp the idea behind shareology through my TED Talk, it really helped to spring forward, what people cared most about and how to position the book and how to write it. So I had a chance to get up on stage and do something that TED had never allowed before from stage, and give not only a talk, but also integrate the social sphere into the audience. So they don't allow mobile phones into the audience ever. And I made a proposal to the executive team that they allow it just this one time to do a test to see what sharing could do and how we could track it live at a TED Talk, and then come back up and share what kind of effects it had throughout the world from a tiny stage in San Francisco. And so we did that, and I then prayed that it would work, that I didn't just pitch the biggest stage on earth to do something and then it bombed. So I was definitely praying at that point. But we basically had a screen up that said what I share can help change the and reimagine the world, which had been something that worked for me in my past, and something that I talked about in my story in my TED Talk, and how that changed my career. In one of the lowest points of my career, which is another story for another time, or you can see that in my TED Talk as well. But eventually, we shared. We had people take a picture of that and share how they thought they could change the world on using Twitter, and then over the course of the next 4 hours, while people were giving their TED Talks, I came back up on stage and shared the results, which was, I think it was like over 20 million impressions over the 4 hours, and it had trended internationally on Twitter, and even more so, the most important aspect is that it had these great ideas, like thousands of ideas from people saying, I want to stop sex trafficking in Africa, or I want, funny things like I want to push the button on the microwave that says pizza and just have a pizza automatically come out. There were all kinds of varied spectrum of things that people said that they wanted to do to help change the world. Well, I was able to map that and show the influence and how it actually, how it grew, and how different people, basically a handful of people throughout the earth, had the ability to help spread an idea. And it was these little pivotal points, kind of like in the Ice Bucket Challenge, these little pivotal points that actually helped to grow influence on each continent of the globe. And so if we were basically to take influence and we were able to then just go back to those influencers and help spread this one more time, but not doing it from a TED stage, we could replicate things going viral using the same methodology. So what that means is that sharing does affect change, sharing does affect it globally, and it can affect it in a minute, and we could replicate it over and over and over again. So I basically took that same methodology and wrote a book about it and talked about the different stages and how you could use it, using the human economy as a baseline, but the actual sharing as the methodology behind it.
Wow, that's cool. And so we can watch the TED Talk, and that's going to basically give us a little bit of a tutorial about how you pulled that off and the impact you had.
Absolutely. It's probably a better way to see what exactly happened.
Yeah, I'll definitely have to do that. And I don't know if you know or not, I teach at Arizona State University, and it's the Executive Masters for Sustainability Leadership program. And right now we are talking about sharing and how these executives can push their social causes further faster. So you know what? I'm going to try to buttonhole you to come in and be a guest speaker for us at a webinar in November when we are really focused on this. But I'll definitely have to have our students dial up your TED Talk and even your book.
I'd love that.
Now, I'd like to take a break at this moment, give our listeners a chance to take a deep breath and give our sponsors a chance to tell their stories. But when we come back, I want to cover how you have gotten into this personal branding and how you're working with people and understanding their brand and the 6 kinds of brands that you have kind of outlined for people, I guess, to get their heads around it. Which one of these 6 archetypes, for lack of a better term, represent you as a personal brand? I'm really fascinated by this one on a couple of different notes. One of the notes, again, going back to my work with these executives at ASU, is they all are trying to work on their personal brand, and they are pivoting a little bit out of, they might have been in the financial side, the supply chain side, marketing side, and they are trying to bring more sustainability and social leadership within their organizations. So that's why I think this would be of particular interest to them, because they are literally going through a transformation of their own personal brand at the moment too. So hold tight. Let's listen to these stories from our sponsors, and we'll be right back with Bryan Kramer. Hey, if you like what you're hearing here on Business of Story, then you are going to love Definitive, the email from Convince and Convert that many marketers say is the most useful resource around. Each day, the team at Convince and Convert picks a topic and sends you the 3 best resources ever created about that topic. It's topical, it's timely, it's useful, so go to definitivedigest.com and subscribe for free right now. Hey, I've got a question for you. What's the best call to action button color on your website? Yeah, you probably didn't see that one coming, did you? Well, what's the best shape and sizes of your CTA buttons? And what copy gets more clicks? You know, these questions have interrupted my sleep patterns for weeks now, until I downloaded a helpful new email marketing guide from Emma called Why We Click: The Psychology Behind a Great Call to Action. You'll learn how applying just a little bit of brain science can transform your CTA buttons into small but mighty conversion powerhouses. It covers the button color, copy, and placement that helps skyrocket click rates. Check it out at myemma.com/click. You know, Emma helps marketers everywhere send smart, stylish email newsletters, promotions, and automated campaigns, and help us all rest a little easier knowing our email marketing is doing its job. So check out their new publication at myemma.com/click. Welcome back to Business of Story, and our guest today, Bryan Kramer, who has done a little bit of everything in the advertising marketing world, from working with big agencies, taking agencies to where they're selling them before the .com, moving out to San Jose, working in Silicon Valley, building his own impressive agency, to then pivot from the model and working as an author, a speaker, a coach, a TED Talk artist. It's just really an honor to have you on the show today, Bryan.
Thanks, man. I'm really honored to be on the show.
And I'm coming from your, the backwoods out here in northern Arizona, where you went to school up at Northern Arizona, or University of Northern Arizona. Just beautiful up here. So it's fun having that connection with you on the show today too. Now, tell us, how did you go from H to H into Shareology? And I kind of get all of that, where it comes together with your marketing background and interest, into personal brand and helping people build their personal brand.
Ooh, that's a good question. How did I transition? I'm not sure that I ever left it. I think I just took a break. I'm always interested, and I've always had a passion in helping people. I love working with people that are fascinated and excited to grow. People that are looking to change their career, that are looking to share in a different way. They're wondering why their career isn't taking off. They want to take off and be an entrepreneur, or they're an entrepreneur and they don't understand why it's not growing. I love working with people in all of those different facets. I've always loved that. And the deviation, or the break I took, was probably working with brands. Now, I do work with people inside of those brands and have always done that. Our agency has done that as well, and helping people to brand personally inside of the company. And even more so since social came along, it's made it a lot easier for people to step up. And now it's gotten to the point where personal brands, I think, are stronger stronger today than at brands themselves. And the reason is because we trust people more than we trust brands. We know that inherently they're going to suggest something as long as their name isn't Justin Bieber and they're being paid $2 million to, hawk a Cadillac that they really don't drive, and we know that. But as long as they are really authentically sharing something because they use it, they love it, and their passion is around it, we're probably more interested in buying that thing because they recommended it versus the company or the brand of that thing saying you need to buy our product. And so that changes the game. That makes it easier for people to then take their passions and turn it into the act of becoming an influencer. And when you're influencing something, you really truly can stand in even ground with a brand and be able to potentially even be paid by a brand to help share around that passion that you already have. It becomes more authentic because you're sharing around something that you already love. So there lies the act of becoming and sharing as an influencer. I think it's going to be even more prevalent as the next few years go by. So that's kind of where my transition of where my focus began was, in influencer marketing. We help companies to build their influencer marketing, but also I want to help people to become influencers of those campaigns, of those brands, and coming at it from both different directions, I think is really, really exciting to me.
Bryan, I've kind of have fallen into this area a little bit too around story. It's something I did not intend to, but it just, I think, is a natural progression when people start really trying to understand their brand stories. It always points back to them in a leadership role, or even a staff role, is what is my story and how does it get expressed through this brand? And I'm curious, as you were talking about this, I think the tipping point for people is if they're not enjoying what they do, if they're stressed every day, if they're just working for the paycheck, just trying to make ends meet, then my belief is they're living someone else's story. And it might be mom and dad's story. It could be your sibling's story. It could be your pal's story. It could be your partner's or your spouse's story. Here's what I expect of you. Here's what I think you're good at. Here's what I think you should do. So go and do it. And we all, at one point or time in our life, have bought into that story. And it's always not our story. We are living into someone else's story. And it's not until I think we get clear with what we really want and give ourselves permission to create that opening in our life of a new possibility of truly then living into our story. And then like I did, I guess, have the guts to take that jump, that your story completely changes. And by looking at the 6 brand personalities that you describe here, and I'll have you describe them here in a moment, I love it because each one of them kind of is its own roadmap then, depending on what you like, what your personality traits are, what you're good at, and what your inclination is in helping people or connecting with people or whatever that might be, is to get right with that, to understand that. It sounds like you help people go through that process and then start living into that by changing your story. Right? I always say the most powerful stories are those that we live into, It's the stories we tell ourselves, so make them a good one. So can you take us through your 6 brand character types around personal branding, and what do each of them mean?
Yeah, absolutely. It's fascinating. So these types actually came from a New York Times personal brand study that was done just 2 years ago, and now I've changed just a little bit of the definition in one of the types because I didn't agree with it. But so I just changed it. But I think for the most part these are great types to use. I've actually used this as my own study. I've taken in an assessment. I built an assessment which I can share with your listeners if you want, and it helps them to identify which one they lean toward. Now as I name these off, you need to know when you're listening to this, you can be more than one. So you don't have to just pick one. If more than one resonates with you, you probably are those 2, 3, or 4. Now the thing is, you typically will lean towards one, but you can be more than one. Hopefully that makes sense. So I'm going to walk through them, and at the end, I can share with you. I've had over 10,000 people take the assessment, and only 3 people argue with me. So I figure that my odds are pretty good that this is pretty accurate.
Let me guess. One of those was Courtney.
I don't even think she's taken it. I need to ask her. Okay, so the personal brand. What's your personal brand? The first one is the altruist. The altruist is somebody who speaks and leads with their heart. They're somebody who also shares really passionately around a topic, one single topic. They're very excited to share around one thing that has them excited, and they really want to make sure that you not only know that, but that they can educate and teach you around that, because that's what they really are passionate and good at. The next one's the early adopter. Now, this is the one that I actually changed. It was more geared towards, now I can't remember the category before it because I've actually adopted it so much that it's now just called early adopter. But it was actually, it'll come to me later tonight at 3 a.m. No, but right now it's early adopter. And this is the person who goes out like myself or any of you out there that bought your Apple Watch at 12:03 a.m. or 12:01 a.m. right when the Apple Watch came out. Now, this is not a bad thing. It's a really good thing to have early adopters, because early adopters are the ones that want to learn something that just came out. Yeah, it could be a shiny penny, but also they want to learn it quickly, and then they want to turn around and teach it to you. So early adopters can be very useful in adopting things quickly that you don't have time to do or any desire to do. They're going to cut through all of that for you, and they're going to come to the point to show you exactly how to do it.
And Bryan, I'm guessing the early adopter is, I suppose, inspired by the adoption curve that we all know of innovator, early adopter, early majority, late majority, laggard.
Yep.
So it must play into that whole construct a little bit.
Absolutely. Yeah. Excuse me. Obviously, I've simplified things here.
Right.
But yes, that's right. The third one's connector. The connector is very easy to understand because it's a person who likes to connect with one or more people. They also like to connect people together. So LinkedIn is a good example where somebody reaches out to you, they see that you are connected with somebody else, can you introduce me? And your first instinct is to say, absolutely, that's what I love to do. I want to connect the two of you, no problem. Or even more so, they take the proactive role to reach out and tell you, I think you should be in alignment or learn or meet about this person or these people. That's what they love to do. I actually think I lean towards connector more than anything else. That would be my personality trait.
And does that one then, where the early adopter might be coming from the adoption curve construct, that connector is certainly prominent in the book, The Tipping Point, talking about the 4 different kinds of folks. Does that sort of play into this thinking around the connector as well?
Yeah. That's right. Yeah, you definitely know your stuff. So yeah, the tipping point does dive into the connector quite a bit as one of the archetypes. That's right.
And the reason why I bring that up, Bryan, is really good stuff here. In the work that you do, so much of it feeds into it, like it does with Business of Story. I read and pull in lots of different things and connect the dots. And so for the listeners out there, if you're going through these 6 steps and the fact that they came through the New York Times study, that's all awesome. But there also is a lot of great reading material, I believe, that backs up each one of these. And Bryan, it sounds like what you've done is just sort of connecting the dots to even give this more life and give it more prominence so people can really buy into it.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot more behind each one of these that we don't have time for in a podcast. But again, at the end, I can give you the URL, and as you take the assessment, there's a whole bunch of information that I've written behind each one of these, and it'll help you read through and actually take action on each one. And then there's a potential series of emails that will guide you through how to actually take advantage of each one as a marketer.
That's great. So we've got the altruist, we've got the connector, and we've got the early adopter.
And there's the careerist. Okay. This is somebody who wants to see their career boom. They basically want to take their career to the next level. Whether it's as an entrepreneur inside a company, they love to they want to become a thought leader. And a careerist is all about building thought leadership to help further their career as well as other people's education. So they're doing it through the example of thought leadership.
All right.
The fifth one is a boomerang. The boomerang is probably one of the most interesting ones because it does have a dual meaning. The boomerang is somebody who asks questions in order to receive a response so that they could then respond. Now, the positive side of that is that they could be a social community manager. These are the people that try to drive questions to drive engagement so that they can come back and have a great conversation around a certain topic. The other side of it, the other meaning to this is a troll. A troll will try to drive a question to get you to come out and play their troll game so that they can come back and have a much deeper negative conversation. So there are two sides to that one.
That is so interesting, Bryan, because we do a lot of work with brand archetyping, and you find an archetype, and there's always that prevalent, powerful, positive archetype, but then there's the shadow archetype. There's that dark side, the yin and yang to all of our personalities. So essentially, the boomerang is the person that I want to hire to get in to create all of my customer personas, because they're going to really appreciate who they are. They're going to answer or ask all the right questions, engage them, and let me know who they are. But the ugly stepsister in this is the troll that's out there that's just beating the hell out of me.
That's right. Yeah. The last one is the selective. The selective is probably one of the most dominant ones within each of us. It's not something that everybody likes to believe that they are, and yet a lot of us are that. And a selective is somebody who has been called an observer or even a lurker. There is a lurker in all of us, so it's not necessarily a bad thing, because there isn't a single person out there that goes through all of Facebook and likes every single post. So what I mean by that is we don't either have the time, or not everything it deserves the like, or sometimes we're just like People Magazine. We like to watch other people's lives, and we like to hear that other people are doing whatever they're doing in their life, and we like to watch that. We're observers in that way. And so selectives are the kind of people, and you want selectives, they're the kind of people that are going to share things selectively with one or two people, and they might do it over email or in private message. Most of them are going to share something and they don't want to be out front. They would rather be behind the scenes, sharing selectively and helping you to support you. And so selectives are, again, they're very much needed in this whole process, and there is a little selective in all of us. Mm-hmm. So those are the six. Those are the six personality traits, the personal brands, and knowing which one you are is really helpful, because you can still be successful in your own career and your own growth of becoming an influencer, as long as you know where your strengths are. And in knowing that, you've got to know which kind of category of passion, which area you fit into, so that you're not finding yourself really upset at having to do certain things because it's not who you are. Does that make sense?
Oh, it totally does. I think it grounds you to really help you understand and appreciate what you're about, who you are. And then again, it comes back to the story, to then write and live into that story that best suits you. Follow that story path, and everything else kind of takes care of itself. It seems like it's sort of like selecting what pair of sunglasses are going to look best on your face. If you go through this, it's which one of these best suits you and your personality, or best explains you. As I'm looking at it, I would definitely say I'm an altruist at the beginning. I've always done a lot of work, shared passion on my sleeve and everything I've done. And now with the work around brand story, I would definitely say big time altruist with a hint of careerist thrown in there. No doubt about that. I would say I was an early adopter as a younger man, but as I've grown wiser, I realized that maybe being the first guy in is not always the best place to be. So I would say have a hint of that, probably dropped off. I don't see myself as a boomerang, other than maybe doing a podcast and pulling these questions out of folks. So I do see hints of them throughout, but I would definitely say at the top of my list, my most predominant personality type is the altruist.
So Park, here's the thing. We're going to get to see exactly what you are. So you don't have to do it right now, but if you go to bryankramer.com, Bryan with a Y, Kramer with a K, /personal brand quiz, then you'll be able to take in less than 2 minutes the assessment, and it'll tell you exactly what you are.
Oh, man, we should have done this at the beginning of the show, and I would have multitasked on you, taken it, and told you if I was even close. But I'll have to do that and let you know what I come up with.
All right. I would love that.
Awesome. Great way to close out the show. You've shared so much different information with us. How can people find out more about you, about your books? You just told us about the quiz. Probably worth mentioning that URL again. Take us through the places we can go to learn more about Bryan Kramer.
Very, very easy. We try to make it easy anyway. It's just bryankramer.com. Again, Bryan with a Y and Kramer with a K. And all of my media and information and social media is all on that website. And then if you're interested in taking the personal brand assessment or quiz, then go to bryankramer.com/personal brand quiz. And that'll allow you to take the quiz. And again, it's really short. It'll take you less than 2 minutes, and you'll get an assessment at the end, along with a few emails that will help you to utilize that category. The emails are specific to that category, so that you can then learn how to harness that category better in marketing yourself.
Oh, that's awesome. And you'll be joining what you said, over 10,000 people that have already taken the assessment. So
it's over that. But at least 10,000, right?
And you've got a lot of people ahead of you that are already getting their story straight. Now's the time for you to go and do that yourself. So Bryan, thank you so much for joining us here on Business of Story. It's just been an absolute pleasure to meet you earlier in this week and have you here a couple days later.
Yeah, thank you, man. And I'm looking forward to having you on my show over at H2H as well. So we'll get to talk about the business of story a little bit more and dive in.
Oh, that means I got to take a shower, right?
It does, because it is video.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks so much. And I'd like to thank all of our listeners for tuning in today. I hope you really got a lot out of the session. I know I did. It was great, great fun. And I appreciate you being here. Join us next week when we will have yet another amazing Business of Story artist that will help us all have a better understanding about who we are, what we do, how our personal passions truly drive our professional pursuits, and then how we reflect those through the brand stories we tell and live into to grow our enterprises and to grow our people. And of course, to help you between now and then, please visit businessofstory.com. I have a lot of free worksheets there for you that you can start crafting your brand story now. Our DIY brand storytelling workbook has been a huge success. I launched it at Social Media Marketing World. We sold tons of them, and we've just updated it now so that it is totally interactive. You can craft your story right within the pages, the PDF pages of the workbook. And I have a very short video tutorial that goes along with each chapter. So if you're confused on any one thing on any one chapter, you can plug it in and I'll be there for you in a 2 to 3 minute piece to talk you through that. So again, join us at businessofstory.com for that. And of course, finally, if you like what you're hearing and you want to share it and you are a connector in Bryan's personal brand attitudes here or any of those, please go to iTunes and share your thoughts on the show. Give us a rating on it. Share it with your world. It certainly helps us spread the word. And that's what I'm all about as an altruist focused on brand story strategy through the business of story. So thanks again. Looking forward to having you back here next Monday. And until then, have a wonderful life.
Thanks for tuning in to The Business of Story. Don't forget there are terrific free storytelling resources for you at thebusinessofstory.com, where you'll also find the complete show archive. The Business of Story is sponsored by Emma and by Convince and Convert, and is produced by Convince and Convert Media. Find more great shows like The Business of Story at marketingpodcasts.com, the first search engine for marketing podcasts. Podcast imaging by AudioBag.com.